What was your impression of Liberty? You didn't go to a Christian college, but as a Christian, what was your impression of Liberty University, the way that Kevin encountered it?
Right. Well, I found myself often concerned or even distressed at things that I saw in Liberty, not because it was an evangelical college, but because it struck me as a place where things that were actually contrary to evangelicalism were offered forth as though they were central to faith. So, to give one example, as an evangelical, I would say that at the heart of Christianity is the gospel, as it's expressed in the New Testament. We see it sort of in its most crystallized form in some of the New Testament epistles of Paul. And it's not sort of up for grabs. There is a content to it. It has to do with the Son of God coming and choosing to abase himself and actually be crucified rather than allow his enemies to suffer the ultimate consequences of their own sin. And it has to do with God then raising him from the dead and issuing forth a new humanity, and then sending the Holy Spirit. Even with some disagreements that I might have, for example, with Grandpa Julius or with folks in the Pentecostal Holiness Church on some smaller theological matters, we would hardly agree on those kind of tenets. I don't doubt that Jerry Falwell would agree with those tenets, but in practice, what I saw happening in the book at Liberty was things that had to do with politics, things that had to do with culture wars, things that had to do with tertiary theological issues, like whether or not we should interpret Genesis as a young earth framework or not. Those sort of seem to be forced to the center, as though that was the center of the faith. And the things that were really most essential, I didn't see that much discussion of. And those would have been interesting things for Bruce to talk about, because those would have been obviously points of disagreement oftentimes between himself and the other students and professors. But where there was mention of it, certainly wasn't much.
But it seems like he was going to Liberty very much looking for the epicenter of the culture wars.
Right.
And that's what he really got, right?
He did, no question. It was a great choice for that focus. But to some degree, I think the essence of what Christianity is about was obscured. And I guess for me, that's the beat of my heart. Not the cultural wars, not the political issues. And so I was actually concerned that not that the gospel of grace was being offered to Kevin and he was rejecting it, but that the gospel of grace so often was either off the spectrum or at the very margins.
I think on the flip side, what was really interesting was that it didn't seem to be those political issues and political positions didn't really seem to be at the forefront for his fellow students. And in fact, he really brings out only one example of a student who brought as much passion, seemed to bring as much passion to the culture wars as Jerry Falwell. And that was his roommate, Henry, who was clearly kind of unhinged, suspecting Kevin of homosexuality and as well as most of his hallmates. So that was, I thought that was, from the standpoint of a secular liberal, that was almost targeted to see that no matter how hard Jerry Falwell tries to churn out more Jerry Falwells, he hasn't really been successful in that. In a way, our human nature, which I think is to question, is to think for ourselves, is to focus on the things that are most important to us and not necessarily to someone else's agenda. It sort of seemed to win the day. Not to say that Kevin was going to agree on many fundamental things with his roommates, but he was certainly going to be able to form relationships with them that clearly were going to last a long time. And I found that very heartening. So I say rah rah, Liberty, you're doing a great job.
We had did you find did you find the students of Liberty actually sympathetic characters? In some cases?
Yeah.
I was interested to see how they would come across. I felt sympathy towards them because I was a young college student in Christians too, although I did not go to a Christian school.
Yeah.
Did you find them sympathetic?
Yeah, I think that I did. And I think that they were intentionally portrayed that way. I mean, any book, any account is going to have, the bias of the observer. I think Kevin liked most of these kids a lot.
Yeah.
And they seem like very likable people. Of course you cringe at certain things that people say. I think about the Facebook status updates of the Liberty students that Kevin quoted. And, a lot of that was kind of cringeworthy. If you don't have that belief, if you don't have that faith, or that's not something that speaks to you, but it's certainly not offensive. It's certainly innocent, and as kind of authentic as one can be when one is 18 or 19 or 20 years old. I did find them very sympathetic, and then especially the few characters who were clearly experiencing questions or doubts about what was being taught at Liberty or what they were being encouraged to think of Liberty. They were especially sympathetic. But in fact, I think what is surprising when you read the book from my perspective is that how normal most of the kids seem. They don't strike you as all that different than students at another college, except as he points out on a number of occasions, on how they spend their Friday and Saturday nights. They're really bored apparently, but other than that, they seem pretty average.
Yeah, they did.
I thought the other thing that, and this is something that has occurred to me many times, that I really, a point that he made that I thought was interesting was whether because of their boredom or their lack of having other things to do, or more likely because of their Christian faith and the way they've been raised, that the students at Liberty seemed pretty happy. They seemed not untroubled, but they seemed, genuinely happy. They seemed genuinely caring and compassionate and concerned about their fellow students in a way that you would never experience in a totally secular environment. Or even a mixed environment, because the secular ethos would win the day. I have to say, I try, as somebody who tries not to be cynical, that has an impact on me. I like the idea of being around people who are happy and concerned and caring and thinking about you. That would put off, I think, a lot of non-believers, a lot of secular people, but I actually kind of really endear. I was too. I absolutely was. Like I said, I found so many of the people very sympathetic, great characters, and I'd love to read kind of what happened next. When and if Kevin did engage on some of these issues, and have some of these conversations without that cloak of his project. I think it would be really fascinating, and as you say, kind of encouraging to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I thought it was good, and I think it should be required reading for anybody who's involved in high-level political advocacy on either side. I would really love to see that, and I honestly think that the more people can begin to see other people as they are, warts and all, but as human beings, the more we're going to be able to move forward. It's really a laying down